In your posture statement, General, you rightly state that the new air refueling tanker remains the top acquisition and recapitalization priority for the Air Force. As you know, the current fleet of Eisenhower-era KC-135s are averaged over 48 years old, and they're long overdue for replacement. And without refuelers, you can't run your fighters. You can't run the rest of them. So it's so integral to the Air Force.
Or a no-fly zone.
Or exactly some of the key missions that we need to accomplish. I'm aware that you're now in the process, the early stages of the strategic basing process that will determine where the KC-46A will be stationed. And I wanted to ask you about that. I'm sure you're aware we have the Pease Air National Guard that is a very vital part of the KC-135 mission and has a very close proximity to air fueling tracks and also has run those missions very cost effectively. I wanted to ask you what type of criteria, I know that you haven't announced the criteria yet, but will that criteria be merit-based and on proximity to refueling air tracks, and how do you anticipate that process coming forward and what the timing will be for announcing those criteria?
We will start to look at those criteria later this year. I will say this is a multi-year process, and I think General Schwartz and I have been very clear from the beginning that we don't want to get too far out in front. This is a 179 aircraft program. It will take over a decade to play out. So we do not want to commit too far in advance to future basing and tie the hands of our successors or the operational commanders who will benefit from this capability later. So our plan is to look at the first bed down issues later this year, and we'll do those on couple of year increments at a time, slowly building up the basing decisions. Obviously, we'll want to take advantage of the capability of the aircraft and understand how it differs and will perform differently than the KC-135s. We'll also look to Air Force operational needs and also the needs of the regional combatant commanders and how they define those requirements. So there are a number of tanker bases that are interested in being the first on the block, if I may put it that way. We understand that. We will work through this process very deliberately as we have in previous bed down decisions.
Well, I appreciate that, and we're very proud of the work that Pease is doing, and I hope that you will consider, of course, in what we want is a transparent, merit-based process. I think that's what everyone would hope and how you make your decisions. And I hope that you will consider, and I assume you would just based on cost effectiveness, the proximity to air refueling tracks. Thank you.
Well, just to respond again, again, this is a multi-year process. So 179 aircraft for this KC-46 program. Plus, we'll have probably roughly 200 more tankers to be modernized in the mid to late 20s and beyond. So this is a long-term proposition. The point I'd like to leave with you is that even as we make the first decisions about where the first airplanes will go, it is not a reflection on the value that we put on the refueling mission at the locations in which they're now serving. So it's a little bit like the F-35 decisions we made last year, where we announced just the first few bases, but our intent is to buy over 1,700 Joint Strike Fighters. So eventually we will get those fighters bedded down at fighter bases around the country. Same with the refueling capability, I think. So if you're not the very first, please don't take that as some sort of context of some negative ranking of some sort. This is going to take a while to field this capability across our Air Force.
Well,
Thank
thank you, and I do appreciate, I know that the process will be open and it will be merit-based, and I think that's all that we can hope for in how you make your decisions, so I appreciate that. I wanted to also follow up, General Petraeus testified before our hearing